I feel like I'm following all these really, really experienced and intelligent and inspiring speakers. So my mine is going to be a little young in its presentation, maybe a little millennial, as my husband would say, since it's about social media in general. But just to give you a little bit of background, I grew up as an Army brat. My dad was in the military and worked for NATO for years, so I grew up in Belgium and grew up on an American base with a lot of very loud Americans, and I was a very shy and introverted Canadian, so it was easy to always be in the background and not be too involved in anything that was going on. And then when my dad retired, we moved to Montreal so I could go to McGill. I had wanted to go to McGill. Speaking of things when you wanted to do when you were 5, I had a poster of McGill on my wall since I was in kindergarten. I was going to go to McGill University. I had seen it in a show and I wanted to go there. And my whole life I built towards going to McGill. So when my parents retired in Montreal so I could go to McGill, which I did, but we moved back to Canada, and I had thought I would be a pathologist, and we moved back to Canada in the middle of my final year of high school, and I didn't have science prereqs to go into health sciences in Quebec, so at the CEGEP level. So they said, well, you could repeat your last year of high school or you can just go and do something else. You're really good at literature. Why don't you go do that? And so I went into literature and I kept getting scholarships and I went to McGill in literature and I did my undergrad and honors there and then my master's because I had funding, and why wouldn't you if you have funding, especially coming from a one-income, blue-collar family. So just kind of went on that route and worked at McGill afterwards for a couple of years after my master's until I decided to do a PhD and move to Calgary. And it was my first year of my PhD that I decided in this very large student association group meeting where I was the English department rep, and all of a sudden they needed a VP operations for the student association, and I'd done nothing like this before. I was always the person in the background, but I thought there is no female on here and there is no arts representative on here. And I decided to raise my hand and volunteer to run as VP operations. And I met my husband, who at the time was incoming president. And one night after we started dating, I was talking about how I had thought I would be a pathologist and go into medicine, but then, literature was easy. And so I went the easy route and it had served me well. And I loved literature. It's entirely selfish and enjoyable field of academia. But he said, well, you could still go into medicine. U of C has no prereqs. And I thought, well, I'm a little old. And he said, nah. And he signed me up for the MCAT. And so I took the MCAT and I did average, I'll admit. He actually did better than I did on verbal reasoning, but I still got into medicine, and it's the best decision I ever made. I love it more than anything that I've done. And it led me to Drumheller. And I did my UCLIC, so the rural clerkship, and I did a rural residency in Lethbridge. And so the thing that I've found the most challenging as a rural physician, and I think it comes from having always been in the background and always having been in a city or in a big population and not having been exposed to small towns, is the small town gossip and how you navigate that as a mini celebrity in a rural area. So, I love Jane Austen, and I've always loved her obsessions with gossip and garb and the constant communal chit-chat, where people say and repeat things that are not necessarily true, but they kind of advance the story and the plot. And it's a little different, however, to live that every day. So where I found that's probably changed over years for physicians that have been practicing for 20 years versus us today is the internet and social media and how easy it is for anybody to say anything in a small town with, no repercussions, or, the impression or the sensation of no repercussions. And generally it's harmless banter and nothing too serious, but once in a while it's quite harmful. And I can't help but wonder and how much this kind of talk factors into burnout and makes it difficult to recruit, other physicians into small towns, because you don't have any anonymity. Wherever you go, everybody knows you. They know who you are. And you have to be very careful about what you say and what you do. For example, this year, our kids, we had sent them to the public school, and we moved to a new neighborhood in Drumheller, and the Catholic school is across the road. And we debated, should we send them to the Catholic school? And then COVID hit, and the school is a lot smaller, and they just had a better plan in place, and they had live streaming in case something happens and a kid has to stay home. And we thought, well, they won't have to go into before and after school care. They'll be able to walk home. They'll be able to have live streaming. We'll send them to the Catholic school instead. And within like 6 hours, I have tons of messages from other moms. Why are you taking your kid out of the school? What do you know that we don't know? No, it's the big question becomes, what do you know that we don't know? And so navigating that kind of, and you don't want to hurt the public school system. You don't want to say anything inappropriate. So it was easy for us to just say, well, we moved and we live across the street, so it just makes sense to send them there, and kind of avoid making any sort of statements that could have political repercussions in a small town, because everything is political. And then, of course, for us, and this is where, this is probably my personal take on small talk gossip. When we first moved out here, we thought we'd build a house, and we hired a local contractor because we thought we'd hire a local guy who would be a nice guy, and he screwed us over, and he breached his contract, and now we're suing him for a good chunk of money. And he grew up here, so he and his friends and family have a really great time berating us on social media, no matter the opportunity they get. For simple things like, I was interviewed once on the side of the road by the newspaper, like, what would you do with $1 million? And I said, I would keep doing what I'm doing. I love my job. I would just do what I do and pay off some debts and, keep doing what I'm doing. And of course, they all went on there and commented about how, I should be using it to move and leave this town where nobody wants me here, and, just completely inappropriate information and just hurtful purposefully. So then you wonder, so my question to the group is, how do you navigate those kinds of avenues? I've tried what I call the social media cleanse, where I literally remove myself completely from everything for, I did pretty well this last time, like 6 months I was off completely. When COVID started, actually, I couldn't handle all the stuff that was being said. So I removed myself, and I thought that would help. But then all my friends and family that are abroad don't get to see pictures of the kids, and it's harder to communicate. You don't talk on the phone. There's a time difference. And so those social media avenues actually do serve a purpose. And so I went back on, and then I kind of had to train myself to not look at those sites or those articles that I knew might garner some berating comments, to kind of build a thicker backbone and try not to take it so personally. And always remember that it usually comes from a place of anger and unhappiness. These keyboard warriors, is what I call them. They're on a mission, and they don't have anything else to do most of the time. So I don't have a clear answer on how you cope with it, but I do think it certainly can have an impact on retention. And that's where I think I'm most worried, because a lot of my generation and the younger generations also don't have as much of the coping skills, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying this, as as we used to. And having all this negativity can really impact how a community can embrace its physicians and keep them. Of course, you know, there's always the 10 dissenters and then the thousands of like super nice people, like my patient who made me a Jane Austen face mask. I mean, how well do you know me to make me a Jane Austen face mask? So, I mean, you have to focus on those versus the few people that, you know, you can't, who you may never be able to change. But how does it impact patient safety? Does it lead to suboptimal care? What do you do when, like I was on call on Saturday, one of the kids of one of the sub-trades who is involved in the lawsuit shows up with an injury and emerge? You know, what do you do? Do you call another physician in to see them? Or, you know, are you able to separate yourself, knowing that this person has written stuff about you, you know, on Facebook. But I mean, I just helped him and it was fine. And he was entirely polite and super nice afterwards and apologetic for everything, you know, but it's that gossip and that ability to talk in a small town and everyone knows everything about everyone in 5 minutes can really, really be more challenging than the fact that you had to deliver a baby, go deal with the patient in long-term care, come back and assist on a surgery, then go have clinic, come back to round on your patients. That just comes and becomes muscle memory. But the kind of harsh gossip can really kind of hurt your heart. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you, Veronique. There's a demand in chat to show us the Jane Austen face mask. I don't know if that's possible, but Dr. Bora did put that out there.
Oh yeah, I'll get Ritesh to go get it. It's in my purse. So, but it's really super cute. I was really impressed. She also made Ritesh a Star Wars one.
Wow. Well, I grew up in a small town, and I certainly had that feeling that everyone knew everyone's business all the time, and I found that challenging. But it was easy for people to move on and let things go. I wonder, do you think social media has changed that? Just because when people do put these opinions out there, they sort of exist forever as a post or a tweet or something else.
Yeah, I do think that has an impact, absolutely. Even in I remember when I started med school, I'd always sit in the back and a teacher would walk in, and the first time that physician was teaching, you know, 90% of the class is Googling that person, and they know everything about you in like 10 minutes before you've even had a chance to present your lecture and present yourself as an intellectual and a colleague and someone who has experience to present. You've already made a judgment call. It's done.
Any questions for Dr. Ram?
I just have a quick question regarding how do you balance your work life and your personal life, considering that you have 3 kids and you have a husband and, you know, you're a clinician, and how do you juggle all those things together?
That's a really good question. It's very hard. I have a great husband. I have to admit, he's an excellent cook, so that helps quite a bit. But we do have to do a lot of planning and tag teaming, and that's usually the big obstacle for call, for if I'm going to be called in. And my mom does live in town, so that helps as well if we need like a last minute someone to come in and watch the kids and we need to go to the hospital urgently. But it takes planning. We do lots. We have Google Calendar. Everybody's got their different color. You know, the babysitter and the grandma know, and so we're always planning that way. The hardest thing is you have to work really hard at finding time for yourself and finding time for you and your spouse, because obviously work and kids take a good chunk of it. Yeah, that's the hardest part. I'm looking for the mask. Because of course I have what we call a massive woman's purse. It's like a carpet bag. And of course now I'm not going to find it. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay. So if you look here, it says Emma. That was the book there. And here's Mansfield Park, Sense and Sensibility. Yeah. Oh, and Northanger Abbey.
I wonder where you got the fabric from.
I have no idea. And the best part is it fits perfect. And she even put the little metal part at the top so that it fits on your nose.
It looks great.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's an amazing experience to have patients who do things like that to show that they care about your well-being too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes it all worth it. You know, that's what you have to focus on.
Yeah.
My favorite patient right now, she brings me books and she writes notes in the book about like what she liked about the book, or she'll provide history about Crow's Nest Pass. And then she always writes at the end of her letters, make sure you put your feet up and enjoy the book. And I just really think like that part of putting my feet up, I really try and treasure that when I go and read her books.
Oh, that's so sweet. I had a patient actually ask me the other day how I was doing, and that was so surprising to me. It kind of threw me off, you know, but.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ram, and